Okay, this is Lester Bishop in Little Valley, New York. Almost 86 years old, a World War II vet. Anyway, it's been quite an interesting life in some respects. Born and raised in Little Valley, graduated in Little Valley Central School, and went to work for Bell Aircraft Corporation in Buffalo in 1941. And worked here until I went into service in August 1943. Went to basic training. Well, first we went to Camp Upton on Long Island. It was an induction center. And then to basic training in Greensboro, North Carolina in the Army Air Force. That was an 8 or 10 week course. From there to aerial gunnery school in Tyndallfield, Florida. And when we got through it, down there was the end of January of 1944. We had a 10-day delay en route, and I came home. The snow was about 2 feet deep at that time, if I remember right. Anyway, then I had to go to Westoverfield, Massachusetts, near Springfield. And that was a gathering point for 4-engine bomber crews, where you go as an individual. When you come out, you're a member of a 10-man crew for a 4-engine bomber. The pilot, co-pilot, radio operator, engineer, navigator, bombardier, gunners. I was supposed to be a ball turret gunner. If you ever seen pictures of that little round ball hanging down from under a B-17 or a B-24, you wonder how you got in there with all the stuff that was in there. Take off. You had a runway at least a mile long, and you should be doing about 125 miles an hour when you take off. And landing is, you're not going as fast when you land, maybe 110, something like that. At Langley Field, Virginia, we flew one night in a brand new B-24, brand spanking new. They put us on a short runway, and that thing just didn't want to go. Right down the end of the runway is a 3-story stone barracks building, 3 stories high. On the other side of that building is the James River. Anyway, we got to about 100 miles an hour, and there's the end of the runway. And Bob pulled the stick back, the wheel you might call it, or what you want to call it. He picked it off the ground at 100 miles an hour. We just barely cleared the top of that building, and we settled down, 100 feet, close to 100 feet, just barely skimmed that James River for 2 or 3 miles before it got enough speed to stay in the air. Just barely had enough speed to keep in the air. And Bob yanked it off. You had to. It was the only chance you had. And just at that moment, willed it to fly and get it off the ground. And what the trouble was, I don't know. But it just didn't want to go. And especially on a short runway. And but we left it, of course. It's not when we flew overseas. When we flew overseas, we had the bomb bay was full of stuff. I don't know what that was all in those big boxes, crates, but whatever it was, got there all right. We left the plane. We had a radar dome in it. Instead of the ball turret, they had a dome that hung down, a radar dome. Called them Pathfinder ships. And they had 2 or 3 of those in every group. And the idea was, but flying in nice clear weather, you can see the ground, from 5-4 miles in the air. And but in cloudy days, you can't see anything. So sometimes you might start out a nice clear day before you got the target, it'd be all clouds, and you couldn't see anything. So they developed radar to pick out your target. And these ships would fly in a lead formation. In Pathfinder ships, the bombardiers were trained to use it. And we took one overseas with us. And our bombardier and navigator went to radar school when we got through down Savannah, Georgia, and we picked up a different navigator. And we had, of course, different bombardier too in Europe. But anyway, so they had these Pathfinder ships that would lead the formation. They could see the target through the clouds. Baloney. They never come within 10 miles of it. They finally had to quit it and just didn't have it perfected well enough. basic training mostly consisted of being in formation with 50 guys in one group, with one supervisor, you might call him. He was the flight leader, they call him. Then you learn how to march down a road, 1 foot ahead of the other. And some of them had 2 left feet. But you had all sorts of interviews, movies, of all instructions, how to behave yourself. Some of them were. Anyway, and what to expect in a lot of cases, in case you wind up in enemy hands. What was the word? Lectures. Quite a few lectures. And just marching down the road and learning the basic principles of right shoulder arms and left and right movements. I've forgotten even the commands. Been a long time. But anyway, as far as where I was segregated into the Air Force, apparently it happened in an induction center in Camp Upton, Long Island, with all the interviews you had there. I guess maybe your past work experience might have had something to do with it. But actually, at that particular time in World War II, 4-engine bomber crews were in short supply. They were getting shot down faster than they could be replaced. And it's like Suriani from Elkaville and the first raid on the ball bearing works in Schweinfurt in Germany. They lost 63 4-engine bombers on one raid. 63. You got 630 GIs. Ploesti oil fields in Romania, from the time they first started to bomb that, the first raid out of North Africa, till the end of the war, there's over 300 4-engine bombers shot down over one target on several raids. You know, several raids, but altogether over 300 4-engine bombers went down over Ploesti. Anyway, when you got to Westover Field in Massachusetts, you were assigned to a crew, and 10-man crews for 4-engine bombers. Perfect strangers when you first come together, but actually, finally, after you're trained together for a while, you're just one single unit, you might say. Anyway, then we went to from Westover to Chatham Air Force Base in Savannah, Georgia, and there's where you started your flying part of your training. And they had a bunch of old B-24s down there, and you flew at various altitudes. Each guy had a job to do, and you had a lot of aerial gunnery. You dropped quite a lot of dummy bombs on the bomb targets. Actually, they only had about a pound of black powder in each one of them. They exploded with a puff of smoke so you could see where they hit. And mostly from 20,000 feet, 20 to 22, 3,000 feet up. Had a lot of navigational training, both day and night. And we had a beautiful navigator. He could fly the string from here to there, and he knew where it was every minute. But anyway, we also flew to Guantanamo, not Guantanamo, but Havana, Cuba, Batista Field, just outside the city of Havana, and flew over water down there for a week or 10 days. We were told to be careful of German submarines. They shot back at you. Anyway, it wasn't really submarine patrol, but we were told to look for them, flying over water. And that was mostly all navigational training. And of course in Tyndall Field there, flew in a ball turret and shot at towed targets. Another airplane is towing a target. Actually, it's like a screen. It shows up like a white sheet. It's actually a screen matched about like this. And 50 caliber bullets go through and leave a little hole. Also, the bullets are painted and dipped in different colored paint. Each gunner is a different color, so you can tell who hit it and who didn't. But anyway, then I came home after got through in Savannah, Georgia, and that was in probably very first part of June 1944. Oh, I turned 22, 1st of May in 44, I turned 22. Anyway, after we got through in Georgia, I was home on a furlough for a few days. Went back to Langland Field, Virginia, which was where we took off from to go overseas. And we were there maybe a week or so. And then we had a brand new B-24 right out of Willow Run, and flew overseas from there. Went from Langley. We were supposed to have gone to Bermuda Field, New Hampshire that day, but the weather was bad in New Hampshire. They had rain and thunderstorms, so they put us down at Fort Dix, and that first night. And the next morning took off for Bermuda Field. We flew around the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor and went to Bermuda Field. We blew up an engine in the traffic pattern before we landed. So we were grounded there for about 3 weeks waiting for a new engine and supercharger and oil tank. And when we got ready to go, we went from there to Goose Bay, Labrador, grounded there because of weather for a couple of days. Then to Reykjavik, Iceland, finally some nuts corners in Ireland. And from Ireland to the 93rd Bomb Group in England. We were a replacement crew, of course, and we were there, I guess maybe close, yeah, we got there on a Sunday, and when we landed there late in the afternoon, the bombers had been somewhere over France or Germany. We were just coming back from the mission. One of the bomb bay doors were flapping on one of them. One of them only had one fin and rudder. Kind of shot up kind of bad. And I thought, boy, what are we getting into? Anyway, we actually flew our first mission on Saturday, the 12th day of August. And we got shot up again. And, well, I don't know, you were some worried, I suppose you might say. Not scared, but maybe a little worried. It was all something brand new, you might say, and but you also we had a good pilot and co-pilot, a good crew, and of course we were flying with experienced crew members on the other airplanes in the raid, which were flying in formation, and so it was, in a way, it was interesting how you formed up. You get maybe 35 bombers from one group, all up in the air in a formation before you start for your target. And they have one airplane that's painted in real bright psychedelic colors. He takes off first, and he just circles around up for the base, more or less. And then all the rest of the airplanes keep going up, and when they finally all get up there, they all get in formation. Then the leader takes off for the target. The guy in the brightly painted airplane goes back and lands. But anyway, it was quite interesting in a way. But anyway, bombed a little airfield outside of Paris that first day, and the 88s, they're the best rifle ever was made here, an aircraft rifle. The 88 millimeter job, effective to 32,000 feet. And anyway, we picked up a little flak. Lost part of our oxygen system, part of our hydraulic system, but fortunately nobody got hurt. And the next day, Sunday, we had to be at briefing at 6 o'clock. It's black smoke. I watched one burst right close to us, that great big orange blossom. But you see pictures of it in the newsreels, pictures of it. It's just black smoke, big puffs of black smoke. Actually, they don't shoot at one airplane or any particular one. You're in a formation. All they do is try to find your altitude, because these are timed fuses and these things explode at a certain altitude. And all they do is fire up a whole bunch of big curtain of shrapnel right in front of you. Right in front of you, you fly into it. And anyway, Sunday morning it had to be at briefing at 6 o'clock. And so nobody knew anything. Where we were going, nobody knew. And when you got to the briefing room, and anyway, nobody on base knew where we were supposed to go or when. But after a while, we finally got the information. they made up a real doozy. And it was actually a ground support mission for the troops in the Falaise pocket. Now that Falaise, that little town I mentioned, was the northwestern end of kind of a valley of German troops, a lot of German armor, and they were practically surrounded by Allied troops. The English was up around Caen, and Patton came in from the south. The First Army was all over the place. They had a whole bunch of Jerry's trapped in this pocket. They called it a pocket, about 20 miles from one end to the other. They only had 2 bridges that would hold their big tanks across the Orne River. And don't hit the boat, don't hit the bridge, get the approaches. And but anyway, we never got that far. We got down close to Falaise, which is on the map, and lucky Jerry and aircraft gunner shot our port wing off. It exploded just outside number 1 engine, and we only had a wing and a half left. Well, consequently, the B-24 doesn't fly very well on a wing and a half. And so I was, of course, on the waist because they had taken ball turrets out of the airplanes. And they cut down on airspeed and increased gasoline consumption. And they wouldn't get too many fighter attacks, so they took the ball turrets right out. And actually, I was flying on the waist with Marty Lavender and Joe. Anyway, Joe LaRusco, yeah, the tail gunner, was of course in behind us. And then the bomb bays were between us and the flight deck and the guys up in the nose. But anyway, when they hit, it just blew half that wing right off. And 700 or 800 gallons of 100 octane gasoline in those tanks made a beautiful bonfire. And you could have toasted marshmallows real quick. Anyway, so there's an escape hatch back in the waist of those airplanes. And you open that thing up, and then you snap on your parachute, and out you go, head first. The line went out. Marty Lavender went out right behind me. Joe LaRusco never got out. The airplane starts going down this way. And due to centrifugal force, you're trapped. You can't wiggle. And the hole's right there, but you can't get to it to go out. And the same thing happened to the pilot and the co-pilot and the engineer up on the flight deck. Anyway, 6 of us out of 10 got out and came down not close together, but in the same area in Normandy. But you have to wear your harness, a parachute harness, which is web straps that's wide, buckle on, where your shoulders and the groin, you're on your waist. The big buckles here, snap your parachute onto. And 24-foot parachute. They're round ones. And the ones they use today, I wouldn't jump with one of those things. Anyway, so they say 6 of us got out. And what was that business? Take your shoes. Oh, yeah, that's something you asked about what happened in this country in the training. We were briefed on a lot of this stuff. Escape and evasion was the title of it, more or less. And so what do you do if you bail out? Well, the thing to do, the first thing to do is when you get to the ground is wrap up your parachute and hide it if you can somewhere. If you're in a woods or ravine or no matter where you are, if it's possible, and the Jerry's aren't there right on top of you real quick, hide your parachute. It shows up real plain, that white parachute cloth. And hide. Get away from the parachute somewhere and hide. And anyway, I didn't have a chance to do that. And no one else did either. But one other thing they mentioned, if you get down, you're going to walk, a whole bunch of walking, mile after mile after mile. And your heated boots you wore over your under your coveralls, or you had a heated suit, and heated electrically, and because it's cold up there at 20,000 feet. And you have heated gloves and heated boots, more or less. They're kind of a felt boot, and they're not made to walk in. They say, take your GI shoes with you. Well, I did. I found a piece of wire, and so before I even go to briefing, I had my shoes wired to my parachute harness, and wore my heated boots. So when he landed, that's the first thing I did. I got my shoes off the harness and took my boots off and threw them at the Jerry's and the German soldiers, I mean by Jerry's, and put my shoes on. The only one in the crew that remembered to do that. According to Al Gallagher, anyway, the radio operator. But anyway, so anyway, I had no chance for escape at that particular time. I think later, the Jerry's almost begged us to make a run for it because we were a nuisance. And eventually, that first day on a Sunday, the navigator we had with us that day and I came down fairly close together. And the 4 Jerry's were waiting for me when I came down and took me to a little French farmhouse. And 15, 20 minutes later, some more Jerry's brought the navigator in. And his last name was Collins. I can't think of his first name anymore. But anyway, and we were together that afternoon, evening, night, and the next day. And then we started walking. And anyway, we walked finally about, I would guess, 25 miles in the next 3 days to the village of Orbeck. And along the way, we kept picking up other prisoners of war, mostly ground troops, English and Canadian and American, of course. And eventually, before we got to Orbeck, we picked up more airmen too that had been shot down. There were 26 guys from the Air Force and probably 100 from ground force troops, all in one big bunch. As I say, we were a nuisance, and the Jerry's wanted to get the hell out of there. And they were getting beat up pretty bad and tried to get back to Germany. And anyway, the massacre took place where? In that first winter, I can't think the name of the town now in France, where about 100 Americans were prisoners. And the Jerry's just lined them all up and shot them because they were a nuisance in the way. They were slowing down the Jerry's to get away. And I think we had our chances, I believe, from things that I watched for, and along with 2 or 3 other guys. But they were just waiting for us to run so they could shoot us, that's all. So we didn't run. In fact, Eisenhower had broadcast on BBC afterwards that don't try to escape. We'll find you before you can find us. And anyway, so we walked about 25 miles to the village of Orbeck. Now, Orbeck had quite a group of Red Cross personnel, and among them was a woman named Paula Grout. Anyway, and they fed us for 2 days. First thing we had to eat in 3 days or 4 days, because the Jerry's were starving to death too, believe it or not. And anyway, so when we got to Orbeck there, as I say, the navigator and I were together. And shortly after we got there, in come the other 4 guys in my crew that had gotten bailed out, and Ted Ellinger and Barney Labner and Jill and the bombardier, I can't remember his name now. Bombardier and Ted, Marty, me. Who was the other guy? No, the navigator, Collins. The radio operator, yeah. Al Gallagher. No, this is many years ago. I've forgotten half the names. Anyway, so the 6 of us that bailed out were all together. And at that time, the Air Force was segregated from the ground force troops. And so about late in the afternoon, about the second day we were at Orbeck, we were loaded into a truck and hauled out of there. But prior to that, Al Gallagher, the radio operator, carried his parachute for 25 miles. And these French Cross ladies were feeding us one day. Al asked them, "How would you like a parachute?" Well, they didn't know really what to think of it. But Al gave the woman his parachute. And her name was Paula Grau, one of these Red Cross ladies. Anyway, she didn't do it herself. She hired it done. But somebody cut that parachute all apart, that nylon cloth, and made each of the 6 of us 2 handkerchiefs, and also 1 scarf. It was just hemmed down the edges, the square piece of cloth, the handkerchiefs, and hemmed down the edges. The scarf was probably 8 inches wide and 3-4 feet long, hemmed up the same way. The Jerry's took the scarves away from us because you could use those to wrap around a guy's neck. The handkerchief you got, and I've still got one of mine, and brought it home. Anyway, another interesting thing, we also had a free French fighter pilot with us. He flew with the English Air Force, but he actually what they called a free French pilot, and had been shot down. And he was with us. But anyway, of course, naturally he could speak French, and he talked to these Red Cross people. And one day they came in, they had hidden some civilian clothes when they came in to this place where we were. It was actually an old cider plant. And anyway, there were buildings there we slept in. And anyway, they brought some civilian clothes with them. At least 4 or 5 French ladies and a couple of men who pushed the carts. And when they walked out, the free French fighter pilot didn't have his uniform on anymore. He had civilian clothes on. And he walked out with the Red Cross people, and the Jerry's didn't know the difference. So there was one escapee, you might say, had a lot of help. And Paula Groth, you remembered that when I mentioned it. But anyway, Paula made these handkerchiefs for us. Or had it made. She also had got pictures. There were 2 sons that were probably 7 and 9 years old at that time that had white shirts on, made out of that same parachute. Her oldest daughter, which we met over there, could speak and understand English. Her first communion dress was made from that parachute. Her picture's in that book, and the 2 boys too. Anyway, so they liked that nylon cloth. But from there, from Orbeck, went out of there on a truck. We had 26 of us in the back of a truck with 4 German guards, and almost got clobbered by Allied fighter planes that were strafing the group we were with. Anyway, finally wound up in the city of Amiens, or Amiens, whatever it is, in where the railroad station was, which had been bombed a few times. One little small French steam engine was sitting right on end, the cab on the ground and the nose straight up in the air, loaded onto boxcars, French boxcars, 40 and 8 boxcars. Well, the 40 graduated to 60. 60 GIs in one little boxcar, like sardines, and starting for Germany. Well, very quiet and peaceful, and you hear a pin drop, you know, you're up there. When I first noticed them down there, like maybe it was 1,000 feet in the air, or 2,000 feet, and 4 of them. And also a French woman came out, and we wore black silk gloves underneath our heated gloves. If you had to take your heated gloves off to do anything, it was cold enough, so your fingers would, any moisture would stick to the metal, you know, gun metal. Anyway, so we wore these black silk gloves. Well, I took my heated gloves off and way up there, a mile or 2, and threw them away. I didn't need them. And I got down closer to the ground and took the black silk gloves and threw them down too. This French woman come bringing them back to me. And I didn't want them. But anyway, the 4 German guards were there, and I could see them from quite a ways down, of course. Of course, naturally, they could see me against the night blue sky and that great big white parachute. You're quite visible. And, but anyway, then he took me to this farmhouse right here.
Well, that's what he took me.
Pardon? Yeah. Now, this farmhouse, as you can see, is all made out of stone. And there's a stairway on this side of it right here. And here it is here, this stairway. We had extra cards, we played cards. We had, in the Christmas, we got a Christmas package, POW Christmas package. There were cribbage boards in some of them. One other guy in our room, among the 20 of us, there was only 2 of us who knew how to play crib. And before too long, most of them knew how. And a lot of guys played bridge. And cards got pretty thick after a while. But anyway, I played cards. In the fall, good weather, we had touch football. And YMCA set in footballs, and wasn't any baseballs or bats, of course. football, I guess all that we got as far as sports equipment. And how you entertained yourself at Christmas time? They had a Christmas party, and they practiced. The guys put it on. It was quite well presented. Invited the German commandant and a couple of German officers sat in the front row. And when we sung Silent Night, they sung right along with us in German. And actually, the German song. And anyway, different things. I don't know, mostly just walking was one of the favorite things. Actually, this camp was made out kind of square, you might say. There's four of these, and this was A and B and C and D, yeah, and I was in C. And it was barbed wire, posts about 10, 15 feet high, and with barbed wire all nailed on them, all just like a fence, like a farm fence. They were about 8 feet in between two of those rows. The inside was coiled barbed wire like this. Maybe you've seen pictures of that stuff. Inside of that, another 10 feet was what they call a warning wire. And that was just a single strand of barbed wire, a little post so high, and the warning wire just this far above the ground. You did not go between the warning wire and the big fence over here. If you did, that guy up there was watching, and he had a machine gun up there. In fact, there were two of them in every guard tower. And you didn't go between this wire and this warning, what they call the warning wire. So he walked just inside of that, all around this compound, around the square here. And had a path, 10 feet wide there with any grass on it. And there was little grass in most of it. It was a sandy soil and flat, perfectly flat, about above at Roof 4. Roof 1 wasn't so much. There was an office up there, and they weren't quite easy to get along with some of them. And they thought their rank was, better than enlisted men, some of them. And in fact, to see the American commandant, American officer in charge there, he was a so-and-so. That the one we had in Roof 4, the American officer in charge there in our compound was a tech sergeant. He did a hell of a good job. The German commander there was a decent sort of a guy too. The sergeant of the guard detail was a miserable so-and-so, a big stoop, we call him. He was a so-and-so, but what's the guy's name? The American tech sergeant. I can't think of his name now. He was promoted to given a commission when he got back to this country. So he did such a hell of a good job over there. Can't think of his name. Anyway, well, it wasn't any fun, but I survived. The German soldiers, the ordinary everyday soldier, yeah, as I say, they're no different than us. They had a job to do and they did it, but at that particular time, the war was winding down. And they knew it was practically over. They knew it was going downhill every day, and they didn't really bother us. Officers, we never saw too many of those, but actually, we call them goons. And in each compound, there was always 3 or 4 goons walking around. They weren't armed. In the daytime, they weren't armed at all. They were just listening. They could understand English. And I'll tell you about just one of them. They'd walk in the barracks. There's a main hall, and right out through the middle of this barracks, and rooms on each side. The hall was maybe 6 feet wide, and doors in each end. Anyway, as soon as the GI there, if you saw a Jerry goon walk in the door, he'd yell, 44! Well, there wasn't anything much going wrong. There shouldn't have been, We did have radios, crystal radios, the radio operators had built, and not a lot of them, but the juries were always looking for them. They never found one. And we got news from BBC, British Broadcasting Company, and maybe once a week or twice. And whoever was running the radio would write it down as fast as he could, 2 or 3 guys, and then they'd put it on. The guy would come around to a room in the barracks. You come in your room, and you posted a guard so the juries weren't listening, and he'd read you the latest news and go on to the next room. So we weren't entirely uninformed. We knew what was going on pretty much. Anyway, this one guy one day walked in the barracks and somebody, 44! 44! He says, I wish you guys would change that number. Everybody looked at him kind of funny. Then he got talking to him. We got him in our room, this Jerry soldier. And we started asking him questions. And he'd been in this country. Most of them had been. And he'd worked in the Brooklyn Naval Yards. He went back to Germany and to get on the bandwagon. They were going full blast, to start with. If you remember your history in 1939, 41, 42. Anyway, so, and he knew it was all over with. His only question was, how soon after this damn war's over can I get back to the States? Well, you don't know he's been here. You ask him questions about sports especially. And we only found one. There was a goon. And he'd never been in this country. And he didn't know the difference between the St. Louis Browns and the Cleveland Indians. And at that time, St. Louis Browns was a football team. And wasn't it? St. Louis Browns? Cleveland, yeah. I've forgotten now anyway. But you ask them questions and they don't know the answer. But this guy did. But we had a guy in our room named Bob Conley. He lived in Brooklyn, worked in the Brooklyn Naval Yards. And so Bob started asking this guy a lot of questions. Hell, they knew the same bartenders down there. He'd been in this country for sure. And I bet we posted a guard so he wouldn't get caught. And I bet he was in our room for an hour. He drank our powdered coffee. That was good. They had ersatz coffee made out of barley, roasted barley. That we couldn't stand. We got some of that too, and we couldn't drink it. And he liked our coffee too. How soon can I get back to the States? He left work back there in this truck. There were 26 guys from the Air Force in this truck, a Jerry guard in each corner with a burp gun or submachine gun. And late in the afternoon, 5, 6 o'clock. Beautiful day. And where we were going, we didn't know. The driver of that truck was a Jerry soldier that had been all shot to smithereens. That's all he could do was drive a truck anymore. And but anyway, he found out when you beat on the top of that cab, you better head for an orchard, get out of sight. But anyway, we hadn't got too far out of Warbeck. We caught up to the German convoy of Red Cross trucks, ambulances. And big Red Crosses on them. And it wasn't just a couple of minutes, and here come 4 P-47s. And fully armed, each one with a 500-pound bomb under the middle of it. The idea is to get this convoy stopped. And so we were the last truck in line. Well, I saw this one P-47 peel off, and his target was to drop it behind us in the road or something, in the back end, keep you from turning around and getting out. And the other guys hit the bombs up the convoy. The Red Cross trucks, they're not supposed to shoot at those guys, but they're all full of ammunition. They're not wounded in there, there's ammunition in there. And they blow up when you shoot them. Anyway, these 4 P-47s come over and drop these, and then all of a sudden here come a couple of Spitfires, English fighter planes. The idea is to stop the last truck in line and the first truck in line. There probably were 7 of us in front of us, these trucks. And so the Spitfires, he was heading for us. And they had 4 little barrels in each wing, little 303s, and make little orange blossoms on the end of them. And so he was going to shoot the hell out of us. Well, there were 6 of us had these scarves. We started waving this white parachute cloth, and he went right over the top of us, zoom, right up there. He made a U-turn, come back, shot the truck right in front of us. Meanwhile, we're beating on the top of that cab. The Jerry guards had jumped off. They were in the ditches on both sides of the road with their machine guns up this way. We had to stay there, see? And they climbed back on board, and this Jerry driver, we turned around, we got out of there in a hurry. They shot up all those other Red Cross trucks, and they all exploded and burned up. You wouldn't believe that one road they had, get out of that pocket there. You wouldn't believe the dead horses the Jerrys were using. And trucks, half-tracks, German soldiers all burned up. The fighter pilots had a ball. They strafed that road 18 hours a day, from as soon as it got daylight till it got really dark. They were strafing that road. And I don't know how many Jerry died there, a whole bunch of them. They got a lot of out of their armament. They got out some of it, but in the Falaise pocket, and they were almost all surrounded. And they got some stuff out into Belgium, but not much.
But I saw a lot of dead Jerry's alongside the road. Horses, of course, were really hot, and they were all blowed up like balloons. And one Typhoon, English plane, like a fighter plane, a single-engine plane, a Typhoon. It wasn't a good fighter plane. It was too old, too slow. He had 4 rocket tubes under each wing. He caught a Jerry Tiger tank out in the open one day. And, of course, they were shooting back at him. He shot all 8 rockets and never come close to that Tiger tank. He'd make one pass after another, never did hit it. But we saw, well, a guy from down Oil City. It's just a little ways down in Pennsylvania past Warren. I'm thinking of Oil City. He was a Polish name, not Jabrewski, but something like that. The leading ace of American Air Force, fighter pilot, flew a P-47. We were at this ground force interrogation camp at Limburg. That's where it was, Limburg. Stalag 12, we call it, the ground force outfit. And just over a little knoll from us, but over a half a mile away, we couldn't quite see it because there was a raise in the ground. It was a German airfield, fighter plane airfield. Well, Dubreski, or whatever his name was, and his wingman was Lieutenant, I used to know that, I saw him afterward, from Pittsburgh. Fry, his last name is Fry. And 247s, they come over and started strafing this airfield. And I know they got 4 fires started. I could see 4 different columns of smoke coming up. Of course, the Jerry's went out there and started getting in their 109s, which is a hell of a good fighter plane, one of the best. And so 2 of them got in the air, and they started chasing the 2 guys in the P-47. Well, Fry is protecting Dubreski's tail, and he's the leading ace of the American Air Force. So Dubreski making a little circle, real tight circle like this, and they can't get on his tail. But Fry, he said, the first thing I knew, he didn't have any instrument panel. They shot 20 and 30 millimeter shells, where Americans had 50 calibers. And one of those 20s went right by him, hit the instrument panel, and blew it up. And hell, they were up over 500 or 600 feet in the air, all while we were watching them. And the ground force guys all run for cover. They were hiding over everything. The Air Force guys were standing out there watching. And they got Fry, they knocked him down. But and I met him afterwards in Wetzlar, and Dulag and talked with him. But Dubreski got it shortly afterwards, just another 2 or 3 days afterwards. And he came in Wetzlar. Oh, he didn't get shot down. No, wait, they shot him down. He had an oil problem, and the engine overheated. He had to crash land. He got shot down, sure as the world. He just died here 3 or 4 years ago. This Dubreski or something like that, his name was, from down around Oil City, PA. And but he and Fry, they get 4 fire stars over that airfield. 4 airplanes were burning up. And, oh yeah, there's a lot of history. Most of it I forgot. As soon as I got home, it was history. First we went to Stalag 12, which was a ground force interrogation center. And why we got there, I don't know. But it didn't amount to anything. It was a pig pen to live in for 3 or 4 days. And then went to Dulag Luft, near Wetzlar. Now Dulag means temporary, and Luft, of course, is air. It's an temporary Air Force camp. And I don't know how many GIs, Air Force guys were there, both officers and enlisted men. But when they get a train load, they shift them out. And the officers went to an officers' Air Force camp, POW camp. Enlisted men went to an enlisted men's POW camp. And so we were there at Dulag Luft, I don't know, 2 or 3 days, and finally loaded back into boxcars. And I'm telling you, you're packed tighter than sardines. And we were allowed out once, I think, after a day or 2. And we finally got to Berlin, and in the railroad yards. And there we sat in the railroad yards, locked up in these damn boxcars. I don't know, we weren't there maybe one night, part of a day probably, because we did not have very good priority of the German transportation system. And anyway, that night, you were trying to sleep, and it wasn't very comfortable. But anyway, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of shooting going on,
and the RAF, the Royal Air Force, flew out of England, and they come over to keep the Jerry's awake, these little nuisance raids. And they dropped a few bombs somewhere, nowhere near us. But there was a German anti-aircraft emplacement just a little ways from us. And that's what was making all the noise. Man, those 88s go off, they make a lot of it. And anyway, the searchlights around, you can see through the one little bit of hole we had in that boxcar. And searchlights around trying to find them up there. Just a nuisance raid that they used to pull, not hitting any particular target, just dropping bombs in the city to keep people awake. Anyway, then finally left there and went to Stalag Luft 4. And if you remember your geography, if you had a map, you could draw a straight line from Berlin up towards the three little countries on the Baltic coast there, Latvia, Lithuania, and one other one. We were about halfway there between there and the free city of Danzig. That's what I'm trying to think of. The free city of Danzig up on the Baltic coast. On a straight line from Berlin to Danzig, we were about halfway up there in part of what was Poland before Germany took it over. And at a POW camp, they started building it almost a year before we got there and kept adding on to it. Eventually, when I was left there, there's over 40,000 POWs in that camp. No, not 40. 2,000 times 4. Over 8,000. 4 compounds and 2,000 in each compound. And one compound was English, Canadians, and 3 others were American. So there's over 8,000 POWs in that one camp. And anyway, that fall was nice. The weather was good. You almost starved to death. The Jerry's didn't feed you a hell of a lot.
They feed you
potatoes. Potatoes. Boiled potatoes. That was it. Not very many of them either. And but we were fortunate to have American rations, American food shipped from this country, shipped in packages called Red Cross packages. Actually, they were shipped through the International Red Cross from this country to Sweden, and then from Sweden to Germany. And Sweden was a neutral country. And there was a can of Spam and a can of corned beef in each package, a pound can of powdered milk, half a pound of sugar, small can of powdered coffee, usually a small box of prunes or raisins, a little half-pound brick of cheese, 4 packages of cigarettes, 1 D-bar, which is a chocolate candy bar, very nutritious. Don't eat it all at once, it'll make you sick. I don't know, there's 2 or 3 other little things in there. A little can of peanut butter once in a while. The packages vary a little bit. You never got very much at one time. Of course, the Germans controlled it, how much you got and when you got it, and they think they helped themselves too to some of it. And I can't hate them for that because they were actually starving to death. And at that time of the war, the Jerry's were in not very good shape. And so we were fortunate to have that stuff, and kept chilling. Oh, Jerry black bread. The loaves weren't very big, and each loaf was cut into 6 pieces for 6 GIs. And I've got the recipe around here somewhere, the official German recipe for black bread. Believe it or not, 20% of it is sawdust. Sawdust. Another part of it is straw, wheat straw, and or barley. Maybe it's barley straw. I don't know, because they did use some barley, but it didn't kill you. But I don't think it did you much good either. Well, yeah, a tin of butter, a pound of butter in one of those packages too. Anyway, that's what kept us alive. Well, that winter was the coldest weather that it had in Europe in 100 years. You were in a little room, about the size of our living room. Maybe not quite as big as that. 20 of you. 20 GIs in the room. Not quite as wide or as long either, because we had no bunks. You'd slept on the floor. You had a bunch of straw, and 2 Jerry blankets were almost useless as far as heat's concerned. So when you moved in there, that room just had a lot of straw on the floor. So most of us did anyway. Took one jerry blanket and folded it over, packed it full of straw, and sewed the edges up with shoestrings. That came in POW, I forgot now what they called the package, from the YMCA in this country. Most everything we got came from this country. And anyway, so you had a mattress about as high as the top of this table after just a little while. But it was a little bit of insulation between you and a single floor. And the floor in the barracks were 3 feet off the ground. So the wind blew under there pretty good. And the body heat kept it. Body heat helped, I'll tell you. Anyway, because you're packed pretty tight together in there, 20 of you in a little room. And one little stove, you got 20 briquettes every day. The briquettes, they were about this long, and this wide, and this thick. Same material you buy briquettes here in this country today. About, you know, like powdered coal, a little something mixed in it to make it form. Anyway, you got 20 of those every day to burn this little stove. And they didn't burn very long. You were very careful with them. But as I say, it was a colder than the devil that winter. And so you almost froze to death, you almost starved to death, but we survived. And, anyway, so we were there in Luft 4, Stalag Luft 4, until the 6th day of February, 1945. Then the Russians were getting too close. So the camp was evacuated. All 8,000 GIs walked out of there. 200 or 300, in groups of 200 or 300 with half a dozen Jerry guards. And so I could not walk. I had diphtheria. And I was called out along with about 12 or 15 other guys that had diphtheria. And doctors had records of that. Of course, we had an American doctor and an English doctor. And 2 or 3 medics there in our compound. And so I couldn't walk out. We had probably 20 of us all together, stayed there in that camp for another 3 or 4 or 5 days with just a half a dozen Jerry guards. And then we were put in boxcars again and went to Barth, Germany, which is right straight north of Berlin on the Baltic coast. And it's Stalag Luft 1, which is an officers' camp. And so they moved us into one room and this one barracks, and of course the rest of it was all officers. And in the Air Force, rank doesn't mean a whole lot till you get to be a colonel. And first, second lieutenant's no better than a buck private, you might say. But we got along real well. But everything was getting worse and worse. And we were finally, we didn't know it really, what went on, but we knew as we saw the guy, he was the head of the SS or the Gestapo or something. I think it was Heinrich Himmler, I think his name was. He came to that camp. He brought orders to the German commander that no Allied airman was to be repatriated alive. And we didn't know that right that particular few minutes, you might say, or day. But he was there, this Himmler guy was there for 2 or 3 days. And he had the most beautiful uniform you ever saw. And his boots were polished. You could use his boots for mirrors, I'll tell you. Anyway, he liked to shoot at guys with his P-38, a pistol. And because when you have an air raid somewhere nearby, they blow sirens. You run like hell for your barracks, you had to get out of sight. And if you're 2 steps behind time, he just stand out there and shoot at him with a pistol. And I don't think he ever hit anybody. But he did that once or twice while he was there. And anyway, I left one piece of parachute cloth in the latrine where they had a place where you could wash your clothes. And that's what I was doing when the sirens blew one day. And the clothes were still there as far as I know. Anyway, I left in a hurry. Anyway, no Allied airman was to be repatriated alive. And that wasn't good news. Next day or two, we were told that the Jerry's were going to defend that area. The Russians get too close, they're going to defend that area. You better get out there and start digging trenches that hide in foxholes. And so you put 2 and 2 together, maybe there's more to that than what we suspected, you know. But anyway, we got there, probably the 10th or 11th of February. But then in March and
April. March was cold. April it started warming up a little. But the night of April 30th, and sometime during that night between April 30th and May 1st, the Germans all disappeared. When we woke up in the morning, they were gone. And 2 or 3 of the American officers there knew about it. The commanding officer knew it, because the German commandant had told them just an hour or two ahead of time. Anyway, Jerry's were all gone. And the GI started tearing fences down and everything else going through the German buildings there. And the Russians were somewhere pretty close. But actually, the Americans had to go find the Russians. The Russians didn't find us. And there's quite a story behind that, too. But I can show you later a newspaper that tells about it. And it was printed there that time. And if I can find the newspaper, that is. Anyway, so,
birthday.
yeah, the 1st of May was my birthday. I woke up 23 years old and I wasn't a POW anymore. But anyway, the Russians were almost as bad. As soon as the Russians got there was only 2 or 3 ever got there, a Russian officer and a couple of other guys. And fortunately, there was I know of one American, he was a navigator, Skanav we call him. He could speak and read and write Russian. And he had Russian laborers there too. Russian POWs did all the work. And he used to talk to the Russian laborers around the corners and try to get information. And then he'd pass it on to us. We almost had to have passports, handwritten, to get out of there. Because we were in Russia. You weren't Germany anymore when they got there. That's Russia. And it took about, I would say, at least 4 days to get arrangements all made to fly B-17s into an airfield at Barth there, 2 or 3 miles from where we were at the camp. It was not like Route 1. And fly a steady stream of B-17s in, land that airfield, never shut the engines off, taxi around the taxiway, and to a certain spot with a stake driven in the ground with a number on it. And probably 10 B-17s to a time, every hour or two, all day long. And he finally evacuated about 10,000 out of that camp, all by air, and flew them back to France. And we finally wound up at Camp Lucky Strike just outside of Le Havre. And we were there at Camp Lucky Strike about close to 3 weeks. And before we got on a boat from home and come out of Le Havre Harbor and docked in Boston 3 or 4 days later, finally wound up in Fort Dix, New Jersey again. And then 2 or 3 days after that, I came home on a 60-day furlough. And I've been home ever since. And that's the biggest part of it. There's a lot of other things in between that I haven't told you about, but one thing was interesting, in a way. It wasn't laughable at the time, but anyway, we had a train going from wherever we landed when we came out of Luft 1, landed somewhere in France, not too far from Le Havre. We was on a train heading for the Camp Lucky Strike, and got to some city, and there was a French freight train on a track right close to us. Also, there's a whole bunch of English troops in another train right close to us. Well, on this French freight train was about 4 little flat cars, we call them, a lot smaller than what we have in this country. And on each one of those flat cars was a great big wooden barrel. It might hold 3,000 or 4,000 gallons or something. And we ship it in a wooden barrel on the railroad. Well, GIs are kind of curious. Down towards the bottom of those barrels on each side was a brass valve, a wheel out this big around. And you open the valve and stuff ran out. Actually, it was wine. Grapes had been pressed and started to ferment, but what you call green wine, I guess, hadn't been processed at all. But pretty soon, every valve in those barrels were open. Stuff going on the ground. There was guys with tin cans and helmets and the canteen cups over the head. Catch that stuff, and you were drinking it. I tried it, but oh my God, I couldn't stand it. It was awful tasting stuff. But some guys thought it was pretty good. And anyway, and they never bothered shutting it off. It just run on the ground. Well, all of a sudden, a Frenchman from the railroad or somewhere came out there, and he saw that, and he began to whoop and holler and wave his arms, and nobody paid attention to him. We couldn't understand French.
he took off, got an American officer, told the guy to shut him off. How many gallons of that stuff went on the ground, I'll never know. But anyway, consequently, that night they wouldn't let us go into Camp Lucky Strike. Some of these guys were so sick they wanted to die. And cold, oh my God, it was cold. And I woke up maybe 1 o'clock in the morning and saw a flicker of light outside. I looked, some guys would start tearing the seats out of the damn train, start burning stuff up, build bonfires to keep warm, and that's where I went. But anyway, it's just one of the things you remember, along with a lot of other ones. Anyway, I was home on a 60-day furlough. I was home on VJ Day, and the war in the Pacific was over. So that's the story of my life. Been in Little Valley ever since.